Tonight we are looking at 3 horrifying caving stories that went horribly wrong. In Mexico, a rockfall buries the food depot a caver's exit depends on, leaving him 2 vertical kilometers of rope on 1.5 energy bars. In the deepest cave on Earth, a torn suit starts a hypothermia clock at -2,000 meters, 3 hours of climbing from the nearest stove. And in South Africa, a record attempt on compressed air sails past its own turn point, into a depth where the diver editing the plan is no longer the man who wrote it. Each story starts with confidence and ends in chaos. As always, viewer discretion is advised. On March 3, 2026, Marcus Webb dropped over the lip of SISTEMA HUAUTLA in Mexico, the deepest cave in the Western Hemisphere, a mountain of stacked shafts and rivers that runs more than 1.5 kilometers into the Oaxaca limestone. He was on the last carry of a month-long expedition. Drop to the camp at -900 meters, spend 2 days de-rigging science gear, and climb out on the fixed ropes. Marcus was 38 years old, an expedition caver who had logged 9 deep camps across 12 years, the quiet one every team wanted on the heavy carries. His habit was an accountant's. Every depot he passed, he opened, counted, and logged. Food, carbide, batteries. Because depth, he liked to say, is a bank, and nobody climbs out of a bank on credit. The plan gave him 48 hours below, feeding from the mid-depot at -500 meters on the climb out. Here is what you need to understand about a deep camp. The exit is not a door, it is a 2-day athletic event. From -900 meters, a caver climbs rope after rope for 20 hours of work, and the body burns through food like a furnace in the cold. The depots are the whole design. Eat at depth, eat at the midpoint, exit with margin. Miss one meal station, and the furnace starts burning the climber instead. The descent ran clean. 60 pitches of familiar rope, gates clicking home, the river roaring somewhere under the boulders. Camp reached in 11 hours flat. He de-rigged for 2 days on schedule, boxed the last instruments, and started up with 2 energy bars and a plan built around the depot above. 400 meters up the ropes, at the ledge where the mid-depot lived, his lamp found the wrong shape in the passage. At the depot ledge, that is when the bank called its loan. A slab the size of a car had peeled off the wall and buried the alcove, because the mountain had shrugged sometime in the past month, and the meal his exit was built on had already failed him. He dug for 40 minutes, gloves scraping on broken slab, and reached 1 crushed can and a shredded bag of carbide, everything else pressed flat under tons of stone. What he didn't know, chewing half a candy bar in the dark, the crux of the climb still lay above him, 500 vertical meters of rope and rebelays. And that habit would now become his ration book, the counted depots, the logged tins, the arithmetic of exactly what remained between him and the sun. His legs shook on the first pitch above the ledge. The rope stretched up into blackness. Panic asked its question. He answered with numbers. 1.5 bars, 500 meters, 20 hours. Because this is what hunger does at depth. It does not stab, it subtracts. Grip strength first, then judgment, then the will to clip the second point at every rebelay. And a climber who stops clipping correctly in hour 15 does not report it to anyone. 1 man on a rope ladder 500 meters tall, 1.5 energy bars, and a surface team that did not expect him for another day. Watch the accountant work the problem. He split the food into 6 rations, 1 per 100 meters of gain, eaten only at the anchor of a completed pitch, payment on delivery, never in advance. He slowed his pace to a banker's crawl, 30 meters of rope, then 60 seconds of stillness, spending heartbeats like coins. Put yourself on that rope for 1 minute of it. Arms that weigh double, a stomach folding in on itself in the cold, and a ledger in your head that says you may eat again only when the next anchor is clipped, counted, and yours. 10 hours in, at -200 meters, the shaking reached his hands, and he strapped his wrists to the ascender loops so the grip could fail without the climb failing. 15 hours in, at -100 meters, he ate the last ration sitting in his harness above the void, and laughed once, quietly, at how good half a frozen energy bar could taste. The final pitches went by in a gray tunnel of Count Clip climb, water dripping somewhere out in the black, his lamp dimming to amber, his mind narrowed to the next anchor and nothing else. 18 hours after the buried depot, a circle of daylight opened above him, and hands he knew reached down over the lip of the entrance shaft. He came over the edge on all fours, sat in the Oaxaca grass, and asked, in a voice like gravel, whether anyone had brought lunch. He survived on 6 rations and a ledger, and the expedition report ruled the depot loss a natural rockfall and rewrote the club's depot doctrine in one line. 2 smaller depots on ledges 60 meters apart, never won, because a bank with a single vault is a bet, not a bank. The deepest cave in the Western Hemisphere still swallows expeditions whole each spring, and its ropes still demand the same 20-hour toll. Marcus still runs the heavy carries, and every team he joins now digs 2 alcoves at the midpoint, counts both, and logs both. Depth is a bank, he tells the new cavers at the entrance. Deposit twice, count everything. And when the mountain shrugs and the vault has failed you, climb on the arithmetic, not on the fear. On February 11th, 2026, Irina Volkov clipped onto the first rope of VERYOVKINA in the Western Caucasus, the deepest cave on Earth, a shaft system that plunges 2,200 meters, deeper below its entrance than most mountains rise above their valleys. She was carrying survey gear to the lowest camp, 3 days down, 2 days of mapping in the terminal galleries, and the long ladder of ropes home. Irina was 33 years old, an expedition caver who had logged 7 Caucasus expeditions in 8 years, the navigator her club trusted in the wet zones. Her fixed habit was tactile. At every rest she ran 2 fingers along every seam of her suit, wrist to ankle, because in a cold cave, she taught the juniors, your suit is not clothing. It is the wall between you and the mountain's temperature. The plan put her through the wet zone below minus 1,800 meters in one push of 6 hours, camp to camp. Here is what you need to understand about deep cold. VERYOVKINA holds its galleries at 4 degrees with near total humidity, and below minus 1,800 the route runs through waterfalls and waist-deep meanders. A dry caver in a sealed suit can work there for days. A wet caver cannot. Soaked insulation sheds body heat perhaps 20 times faster, and the cave never warms, never pauses, never negotiates. The first 2 days ran like clockwork. 90 pitches of clicking gates and scraping boots, camps at minus 700 and minus 1,400, hot soup and dry socks, and the strange comfort of a tent pitched under a kilometer of stone. She entered the wet zone on schedule, sealed to the chin. Halfway along a flooded meander, a hidden quartz edge waited at hip height. In the meander's black water, that is when the wall between temperatures failed. A palm-long tear opened along her hip seam, because the rock had been honed by 10,000 years of water, and the suit's promise of a dry crossing had already failed her. 4-degree water poured in along her leg, and the cold arrived not as pain but as weight. What she didn't know, wading out the meander's far side, the nearest stove and dry layers sat at the camp 3 hours of hard caving above, and that habit would now set the terms of the race. 2 fingers on the seam, measuring the tear, calculating exactly how fast the mountain was buying her heat. Her leg went numb at the thigh. The shivering started in waves. Panic wanted her to run. Running drains heat faster. She set a climber's pace instead, because this is hypothermia's honest timetable at depth. 2 hours of shivering you can work through, then clumsy hands that fumble carabiners. Then a warm drowsiness that feels like rescue and is the opposite, and every stage arrives quieter than the last. One woman soaked to the hip at minus 2,000 meters, 3 hours of pitches between her and a stove, and a body spending heat it could not earn back.
Watch the navigator manage her own decline. First move, strip the flooded leg, wring the fleece, reseal. 30 seconds of worse for hours of better. Second move, sugar, the whole emergency bar at once, fuel thrown on the failing furnace. Third, pace, not panic, a steady rhythm on the ropes that made heat instead of burning it. Put yourself in that shaft for 1 minute of it. A leg that answers late. Fingers you have to watch to trust on the gate of a carabiner. And a soft, warm voice in the back of your skull suggesting that a short rest on this ledge would be lovely. The one suggestion you must never take. 1 hour up, at the great waterfall pitch, spray hammered her hood and she climbed through it counting out loud. 40 rope lengths left, her voice steadier than her hands. 2 hours up, the fumbling began, and she switched to the drill she taught juniors. Look at the gate, clip, look again, tug twice, sight doing the job that feeling had abandoned. The last pitch to camp took her 11 minutes instead of 4, and she narrated every clip of it aloud to an audience of stone. Then there was tent light through the dark, and teammates pulling her boots, and a stove hissing to a roar like applause while she shivered inside 2 sleeping bags stacked like armor. Her core came back over 4 hours of soup and heat packs, and by morning, her hands could hold a survey book again.
She survived on a wrung fleece, 1 sugar bar, and a spoken checklist, and the expedition report ruled that the suit had failed on a quartz edge and the protocol had held, adding 1 line to the club's wet zone doctrine. Patch kits ride on the harness, not in the pack. 60 grams that buy back the wall between you and the mountain. The deepest cave on Earth still holds its 4 degrees down there tonight. 2,000 meters of patient arithmetic. Irina went back the next season with a patch kit taped to her chest strap, and her seam ritual is club standard now, wrist to ankle at every rest. The mountain buys your heat with time, she tells the juniors at the entrance pitch. Keep the wall sealed, feed the furnace. And when the warm voice offers you a rest you have not earned, answer it out loud, and keep climbing. On November 9th, 2026, Victor Hale floated on his back in a green pool in the Kalahari scrubland, on the surface of Buz Munzgat, the deepest freshwater sinkhole in Africa, a flooded well in the desert that drops 280 meters below its quiet skin. He was there for a number, 150 meters on ordinary compressed air, a personal record dive, 40 minutes bottom to surface with his support diver holding station at 50 meters. Victor was 41 years old, a deep diver who had logged 800 dives and 3 national depth attempts across 20 years, famous in his club for margins cut thinner every season. His trademark was a phrase, said at every briefing with a tap on his dive computer. The plan is the plan. Depth, time, turn. No edits at the bottom of the well. The slate read 150 meters, 4 minutes at depth, and a staged 90-minute climb back through the decompression stops. Here is what you need to understand about deep air. Past 60 meters, compressed air becomes a drug and a poison at once. Nitrogen narcosis fogging the mind, while oxygen itself, under pressure, edges toward toxicity that can switch a brain off without warning. Modern deep divers breathe helium mixes to stay clear-headed. Deep air record chasing is older, cheaper, and prouder. Divers pushing past 100 meters carrying nothing but the gas that is slowly poisoning them. The descent began perfectly, bubbles hissing past his hood, the green window of the entrance shrinking above, the water clearing to black glass, his lamp finding the pale walls of the great bell as the meters unwound. 60, 90, 120. His support diver watched the twin glow of his lights sink below the 50-meter station, regulator clicking with each breath, right on time, right on the line. At 140 meters, that is when the fog rolled in behind his eyes. The depth gauge swam pleasantly in his vision. The cold felt distant and warm at once. because at that pressure, the air itself had already failed as a breathing gas, and his thoughts moved like divers in syrup. The computer logged him passing 150 meters, the turn, without turning. What he didn't know, drifting past his own number in a warm fog, the bottom of the well still lay far below, and his margin was measured in breaths. And that turn would now become the whole story. The plan is the plan. No edits at the bottom of the well, while his gloved thumb hung motionless beside the inflator button. The computer logged 161 meters. The descent stopped there. Panic never surfaced in the data. The log shows 8 motionless minutes. The lights below went still. Because this is how oxygen toxicity ends a deep air dive. Not with a struggle the gauges can record, but with a convulsion or a quiet blackout. A switch thrown somewhere behind the eyes, and a regulator that slips from a mouth that no longer knows to hold it. One diver motionless at 161 meters. One support diver at 50, staring down at a darkness that had stopped answering. And a rule older than both of them. Past 100 meters, no rescuer follows on air. Watch what discipline looks like when it can no longer save its friend. The support diver held his station to his own ceiling, lamp signaling down into the black. One long, two short, answer me, for 4 full minutes. Then he did the hardest correct thing in diving. He turned, climbed his stops, and surfaced alone to raise the alarm, because a second body at the bottom of the well helps no one home. Put yourself at that 50-meter station for 1 minute of it. The cold pressing through your suit. A friend's lights somewhere under your fins, fixed as stars. And an order on your own slate, in his handwriting more or less. Leave. The recovery took the club 9 days. A technical team on helium mixes, staged cylinders hung down the line like lanterns. One careful descent to 161 meters. They brought Victor up through the same stops he had written for himself. 90 unhurried minutes, cylinder by staged cylinder along the shot line. On the surface, his computer was unclipped and read aloud to the men on the rocks, water dripping from the housing. The descent, the missed turn at 150, the 8 still minutes at the bottom of the log. Victor Hale died of a blackout at 161 meters, in the deepest freshwater sinkhole in Africa, with 4 minutes of gas margin still strapped to his back, a margin his mind was no longer present to spend. The support diver survived. The plan had held everyone but its author. The inquest ruled the death oxygen toxicity on a deep air record attempt, and the club's verdict was printed above the dive board within the season. No member attempts below 100 meters on air in any water for any record, helium or stay home. Boozmundscat still lies green and quiet in the Kalahari tonight, the deepest freshwater well in Africa, keeping its own hours. The support diver runs the club's training now, and every course ends at the pool's edge with Victor's computer, its final log preserved under glass. The plan is the plan, he tells each new class, tapping the screen. Write it on the surface, where you are smartest. Then dive it exactly, because at the bottom of the well, the person editing the plan is not the person who wrote it.